Each Wednesday morning, cadets of the Royal Solomon Islands Police parade for inspection.
Open order, march!
But their commanding officer is an outsider, a superintendent from New Zealand. And though these scenes may evoke the Age of Empire, this is a 21st century mission to save a failing Pacific Island nation. The Solomons are in many ways a South Pacific paradise, a sweep of over 900 islands, some only big enough to hold a few palm trees. But in recent years, ethnic violence had boiled over into the capital's dusty streets. Warlords held the government hostage, and the police were too corrupt or inept to control the lawlessness.
I only see that on TV. It happens in Africa, and I didn't think we'd see it in a Pacific Island country like Solomon Islands.
But then came an international intervention that arrived with great thunder in 2003 to restore law and order and rebuild what remained. Led by Australia and bolstered by New Zealand and a handful of other Pacific nations, this is the Regional Assistance Mission to the Solomon Islands, known as RAMSI.
The majority of Solomon Islanders will admit to the fact that we needed RAMSI.
Dorothy Wickham is a local Solomon Islands journalist who watched her nation crumble into chaos.
We were actually calling for foreign intervention. Not only our political leaders, but ordinary citizens knew we couldn't control it anymore.
RAMSI's mission statement is of one Pacific neighbor helping another, a message promoted down to license plates printed with the local Pidgin English slogan, "Help 'em Friend." But behind this publicized generosity lies a harder strategic intent.
Is nothing to do, well, very little to do with this label that they operate under, Operation Help Him Friend. I think that's just a label of convenience, but the real thing is the regional security, which is good for us.
Firstly, September 11, and then the Bali bombing. I think that really brought home to the Australian government the importance of our immediate region to Australia's security.
Dr. Elsina Wainwright authored the policy report that convinced the Australian government that failing states, no matter how small, now play a role in global security.
If Australia wasn't robustly engaged in Solomon Islands, others perhaps could be.
All the Bible says on the Mount of Zion, Revelation 15.
A devoutly Christian country, the Solomon Islands aren't likely to produce the sort of radical Islamic groups responsible for attacks elsewhere in the region. But still, there were fears that a lawless country sitting just off Australia's coast could become a base for terrorist operations.
9/11, in a way, it was bad for America, but I think it was the best thing that happened for Solomon Islands, because they finally took notice of our problem.
The first blow falls on the Japanese in the strategically important Solomon Islands in the South Pacific.
The Solomons' largest island, Guadalcanal, is perhaps best known as the scene of some of the fiercest fighting of World War II between U.S. and Japanese forces in their battle for control of the Pacific.
Hardened Marines, long trained in landing operations, put ashore and drive the Japanese defenders back into the jungle.
12,500 Marines landed Red Beach on Guadalcanal just after 9 o'clock, 7th of August.
History permeates here. Battlefield tours are one of the country's remaining tourist attractions, and even today, remnants of war can be found in the dense jungles and local villages. And those memories are now being recalled with the same camps used by RAMSI.
It is incredibly powerful to walk these battlefields now as a military force here now restoring and assisting law and order and security in this country, knowing that 60 years ago there were Americans and Japanese fighting for the same piece of ground.
Despite the presence of Pacific Islanders among RAMSI's ranks, there is still a great deal of sensitivity surrounding this Australian-led mission in a country that only received its independence from the British in the late 1970s. At a remote outpost on the island of Malaita, along with patrols,
this one?
There is also a great deal of public relations going on.
My name is Andrew.
And local chiefs say visits by top RAMSI officials have helped them overcome their initial distrust of the intervention.
When the RAMSI came, it's very hard. Very, very hard. They say, oh, the army just come just to kill us. I went and meet the RAMSI boss. He just explained it to me. He said, we are coming as your friend. I said,
Strategically, at least, this mission has clearly been a success. 4,000 weapons have been collected off the streets, and hundreds of arrests have removed the most dangerous criminal elements from society.
In terms of law and order, the respect for the rule of law, they will give RAMSI a very, very high mark. But I think people are now beginning to ask questions.
Many of these questions center on the fact that Australia has placed its own personnel in some of the most visible and vital roles of the country's government and law enforcement bodies.
We have put in to the Ministry of Finance around 17 people to help sort out the government's finances. In some cases, there aren't enough Solomon Islands public servants to work with them, and that's a significant problem.
The impression they created by posting these people in these areas is that Solomon Islanders are not up to it. My problem begins when people create a system that is totally dependent on them.
I think there is an ongoing concern that Australia not be heavy-handed in the region, and that it not just voice solutions, if you will, onto Solomon Islands to ensure that it avoids just being, if you will, a colonial administration.
It is challenges like these that RAMSI faces as it continues the harder task of rebuilding the Solomon Islands now that order has once again returned to the streets. A task that observers are convinced will take longer and cost more than perhaps originally anticipated.
I don't think Australia wants to be here 10 years. They want to be out of here in 5. But I don't think that's possible. Well, they've got themselves into something, they have to hang around and do it properly.
Doing it properly could take decades, and even then, the long-term potential for an independent, stable, and successful Solomon Islands is unclear. But with the arrival of RAMSI, life in this island nation has for now settled into largely peaceful routine, and men with guns are serving more modest purposes.
Tell them it's going to sting, Ezekiel.